I would love to hear from all of you if you're comfortable in doing so, and also just talk about different skills that we can bring back to our community, different resources that we have, different perspectives that some of us might bring to the table. Um, I know we have pastor, we have teachers in this room, we have incredible human beings, and I would love to get your input as much as I want to share mine a little bit. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. So we're going to talk and start talking about perception. I know you know a little bit of my story, but we're going to start here on this page where I want you to look at these pictures. What emotions, what feelings, what do you see?
Happy.
Happy. Thank you, Lula, for sharing. Lula sees happy. Anyone else?
Fun. Teenagers.
Awesome.
I think engaged also.
Definitely.
Engaged like in your activities, in your friendships.
Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, definitely. So when I look at these pictures, even I am convinced, right, of this happy teenager that has siblings. She's on a team. She has some different friend groups. She does community service. And then I'm just going to reiterate some of the things I talked about in my keynote. So that person was the 3-season varsity athlete, the class representative, the perfectionist, the honor roll student, the runner, the youth group leader, the avid volunteer. And this is the side that you wouldn't usually see. The side talking about my parents' divorce, my sister's battle with cancer, her anorexia. She tried to take her own life and was in and out of psychiatric hospitals for most of my childhood. My Nana passed away due to cancer. My mom's longtime boyfriend moved out, who was kind of like a father figure to me. My brother began acting out because he was struggling as well. And because of all of this, I thought I had to become perfect. I didn't want my parents to have to worry about anything else. So this person on the left is who I became because I thought it was the only acceptable way to deal with this struggle. So now we look at these pictures again, and I give you a different story. I tell you that this picture on the left, this black and white picture of the Red Sox with the Red Sox hat, that was Friday, December 9th, 2016. I had stayed home from school that day to try and take, a mental health day, just because I was struggling so much and I knew I wouldn't be able to be at school. And sometimes that's usually a positive thing for me as an individual, and just in general, like to take space and to take a bath and to listen to music and do what you need to do and make yourself feel good. But unfortunately, this was the day that I convinced myself that maybe I could just get away from all the pain. And that selfie you would never realize was hours before I made that first attempt. This picture on the soccer field was the summer before, it was either my freshman year or my sophomore year, I believe. Sophomore year, because it was positive about that. But that was the game. And afterwards, my teammates had come up to me and talked to me because they noticed cuts on my wrist, and that wasn't something that I wanted anyone else to see ever. But it was summertime, and I was playing soccer, so I was in short sleeves. But that was what gave me away ultimately, or in this one instance, which was good because my friends did the right thing and talked to my mom about it, who then talked to me about it. But that's the reality you don't see when you look at that picture. And then you just see that this happy girl was also struggling to put on this Closets for a Cause community service drive as a freshman in high school, when she used to love community service, but now she didn't have the time and she was overwhelmed and stressed. And that was me. That was the person that I became, smiling through all of this pain. So that's the difference that having perception changes things. So why was I hiding? It seems like there were two opposing sides of my personality, and I only let one of them show. We've learned to hide the less acceptable parts of ourselves because society has taught us that we must be perfect, and social media has enforced it. So I hit my breaking point, and after years of piling up, perfecting, I broke. The act was over. I was exhausted of going through the motions and pretending to be fine just to do it all over again the next day. And so I think of it as a shaken up Coke can. Um, you open it up and it explodes. So I had enough and I tried to take my own life, and this was when the explosion hit. But what a lot of people don't talk about with the shaken up Coke can is the mess that it creates afterwards. Um, and it's a beautiful mess, but what happens is then you have to go and you have to clean it up. Um, and so that's what I did. I was in the hospital for 9 months, and my life was pretty shitty at the time. I had to figure out who I was again. For months, I still insisted I was fine. Um, I don't remember even looking back much about this time in the hospital besides, um, the number of times I attempted to take my life. I hit rock bottom. And the turning point, like I mentioned in my keynote, was 6 months into treatment when I had this realization um, that what I was doing wasn't working. So I needed to try something different. And I began telling someone when I was having a hard time, and talking to my clinician more thoughtfully. And it didn't become easy, but it became possible. So these reasons why became reasons to fly. Um, and I'll share these with you today. So when I was at this extremely low point and I came up with those reasons to fly, I started with a pen and a paper, and they turned into these reasons for you. Even if everyone else has left, I'm going to stay. Opportunities are waiting for you, chances are waiting to be taken. There are years and years to work on things, and you never know what they will look like in 5 years. 4. It's time to find your passion. Try out new things and see what you like. 5. People are waiting for you to inspire them, befriend them, and teach them. 6. All your cells are fighting for you and sacrificing themselves every day to keep you alive. 7. There are people in your life that love you, even if it doesn't feel like it. It gets better because it can't stay this dark forever. 9. You are so much more than what you're facing right now. Your story isn't over yet. 10. You are not weak, and your strength comes from accepting you may not be okay, and that's okay. Everything happens for a reason. You may not see it, but what you're going through right now, like I said, has purpose. You're a work in progress, a work of art, always changing. And there are no mistakes in art. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that before, but now I will. And last but not least, you are enough. No matter what you think or what some may say, your worth is infinite and can't be taken away. So those are our 13 reasons to fly, the general ones that I came up with from my hospital bedroom, that were then posted everywhere I could put them. And so what I challenge you all kind of next, well, I'll allude into that activity later. But I want you to keep those general reasons to fly in as we move through the rest of this presentation. These reasons, while some of them may seem cliche, do have very powerful messages behind each of them. And I hope that you can all create your personal reasons to fly as well. Besides these kind of generic messages, I also want you to create individual ones that will help you fly and help you soar no matter what's going on at the time. And so just a little bit about the organization currently. 13 Reasons to Fly. These reasons that I just showed you became the basis of which I founded my nonprofit. And so again, upon discharge from the hospital, my recovery as my recovery and as my mental health improved, 13 Reasons to Fly became possible and kind of took off after I discharged from the hospital and founded 13 Reasons to Fly. I turned it from this little campaign, signed the papers with much support from some community connections I have, and was able to found it as a nonprofit. Um, and 13 Reasons to Fly aims to stamp out this stigma and normalize the conversation surrounding mental illness. And how we do this is just going anywhere and everywhere that will listen. Anywhere willing to cultivate a conversation surrounding mental health is worth starting. And so we go to places of worship, conferences, and the big hopes is schools, because we know that stigma lies in schools and that's where it starts, and that's where it compounds. And so if we can stop it and if we can have mental health education, oh my goodness, that is a place I would love to go. And I'd love for our future generations to have that as well. And so that's something we're advocating for. I'm taking a social policy class right now, and I would love to be a social worker. I am going to be a social worker. And policy is important. So I do want to say 13 Reasons to Fly, while we hope to have this conversation of positivity and starting the conversation around mental illness, we're also hoping to advocate on a large level of saying education needs to happen in schools. And so it's kind of that this battle can't be fought in just one mode. And so I do want to mention that 13 Reasons to Fly does hope to advocate for that change on a legislative level, definitely in the future, as well as in the community, because both need to happen. We also want to ensure everyone knows that it's okay to not be okay, and that there's always hope. And so that's why I just go out and I say, and I kind of point out all of my story, because I think that a lot of people can resonate with it, and a lot of people have a similar story to share that they think for whatever reason that they can't. And so down below is different youth I've had the privilege of connecting with over my conferences. And I can't tell you how many of them have inspired me to continue this work. And so ultimately, another goal I have is to make it a youth organization, youth run, youth led. And so it's not just me, but it's all these incredible people that you see here in the pictures that also have a story, can become advocates and to bring the message back to their community. I have vision that's, way up here in this huge, big idea. It's not currently happening right now, but I would love, and our goal is to spread this to other young people so that they can become 13 Reasons to Fly advocates as well. And we've done that sometimes and started chapters in different communities. And I can't wait for it to be a more sustained program as I gain more experience, and hopefully team members as well. So now I'm going to transition into asking you all, what are your reasons to fly? So I want you to take a few minutes. Right now it's 11:21, so I think we're doing pretty good on time. And I can unshare my screen if you'd like. What we usually do is, I know if you guys noticed before, the virtual backgrounds of a lot of the co-hosts, it was a picture of a kite from the last conference, which Melinda had shared with me. Thank you, Melinda. And I didn't even realize it was the kite until she had said, hey, do you see this? And incredible. So we used to do that. And we used to have markers and stickers and all that sort of thing. Because we're in a virtual space at the moment, I invite you all to think about your reasons to fly, to share some by unmuting, by putting in the chat. But I do want to give, maybe a 3-minute at least brainstorm for you all to reflect and to think about, what are your reasons to live? What keeps you going? It can be simple, it can be complex, but just make it personal. I always tell people that one of my reasons to fly has always been ice cream. And now, while my favorite flavor has changed, ice cream always does help make me feel better. And so I'm not going to say that that's the one thing that I have to keep me going, but it's one of the many. And so there's nothing too small. You can put ice cream, something that you like on there, but you can also put your hopes and your dreams. Anything you enjoy doing doesn't have to be a huge idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer 3 minutes of brainstorm time. I'm going to mute myself. And then once those 3 minutes are over, we can start doing some share outs if people feel comfortable doing so. I see there's some messages in the chat. I love that. Does anyone
Hey,
want to
Beth,
use out? Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to ask how can I support you? And two, given that we're at a place of conversation, do you want to invite folks to turn their camera on? Yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. Is anyone comfortable sharing their reason, or would you like us to read it?
Can share.
Thank you.
My name is Pascal, and I am a social worker, and I work with the Department of Children and Families. And I think what keeps me flying is the work that I do, working with the kids and being their voice when they don't have one. When you're working with with a population that sometimes is neglected, being that voice for the kids that I work with, keeps me going, as well as my own children. So.
Thank you for sharing. I, maybe I'm just emotional this morning, but hearing your voice and even just your introduction makes me tear up as well. Thank you for your work, and I'm glad that it is one of your reasons to fly.
Isabelle, I think what keeps me flying is that I get excitement and joy of the success of underdogs. In sports, there is what's called an underdog, meaning that statistically, you should not win. Statistically, you don't have a shot. You shouldn't be in the game. But I get more pleasure in other success, and my butterfly is just being able to be resourceful enough to just change the narrative for individuals. So that's just me. And obviously from that, there's a whole umbrella of things that comes from that.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that, as well as me thinking that we need to support underdogs, right? We are underdogs, and those underdogs, the voices that we don't get to hear as often are the ones that have been silenced. And so what can we do to uplift them more? Thank you for sharing and bringing up that idea.
I would say definitely the first one that comes to my mind is my little sister, because I know that she looks up to me. So a lot of my choices, I always think like, how is this gonna help her? The athletes that I coach, the students that I teach, and my family, I like, especially the athletes, and trying to break that stigma, talking about it, all of that. And then also with my students, they're so young. I teach third grade, and just little things that you can do, whether it's like the growth mindset, encouraging that mistakes are okay, making a safe environment. It's incredible to see years later, they're still using that language, and I know it's not a lot, but as you can see from Belle, one person can make a huge difference. So I'm hoping that just by teaching them that and adding that into the curriculum and not making it all just rigor and academics, that can help make a change.
And it does. I'm one example of that, but also Coach Potzner, teacher Potzner, has also, like, I know my dad, who works in the same district, has pointed her out for her growth mindset things. And so there is no gesture too small, which is something that I hope to also emphasize, that no matter what age, no matter what capacity you are in, starting conversations and starting the safe environment of allowing third graders to just be their imperfect beings and their children with all of their emotions and their thoughts is an incredible thing to do. And so that's why I think, whether you're a teacher, social worker, pastor, community member, all of us have a role. And so thank you for sharing yours. My children, from Lula. I hope to help my children lean into their own truth and embrace themselves 100%. I love that, and I think that's all one can hope to do as an adult and as a parent. My inner child, the world needs light, absolutely. uncovering my truth to help others stand in theirs. That's beautiful. There is purpose in my healing and story. Absolutely. Dream to embrace all of my unapologetically to continue the conversation to normalize. Yes, I love all of that that's there. Thank you so much for sharing, Lula. Um, yeah, your words speak volumes, so I'm not even going to try and interpret them more. I think those are all beautiful. So thank you for sharing those statements. I know Geraldine had also put that my dream of becoming a social worker myself. So, fellow social worker dream, I see you. I'm rooting for you. And I hope that you're also able to take care of yourself during that journey. My family, my fiance from Geraldine, my own physical disability. I hope to one day become a mom. That is also a beautiful dream. Anyone else like to share?
Oh, Val, I always have to take a deep breath with you. I think that, as an authentic kind of wish and hope as a mom and as a parent of a child with mental illness, and as someone who struggles with anxiety herself, I know the seeds we plant grow. And so, really, part of the motivation and the butterfly effect, right, is that we might not always be around to see where and how that are nurtured grow, but it's the planting of seeds that creates the potential for the future. And so, I always love to kind of think about what is the world going to be with young people like you leading the way. And that is a couple of reasons that, we continue to try to fly.
Yes, thank you for sharing that as well. And that is a perfect segue, Melinda, into sharing that we're not always going to see where our messages go. And that is a challenge. That it's hard to know if what you're saying or what you're doing is making a difference. And so I guess this is just the time for me to say that it is. As someone that's gone through the mental health care system, someone that's gone through the school systems, obviously, as many of you probably have, especially the reason I want to become a social worker is because I've had incredible social workers on my side. The reason I want to work with young people is because I want to be the voice that someone needed, because I was able to be supported by social workers when I was struggling. And my social workers, I'm not allowed to reach out to them, the ones that I had in the past, obviously. And so they might not know that the incredible work they did in me. And they had to trust, for 3 years after discharge that I was going to be okay. And here I am, I definitely am. But it's hard to know you're making a difference in the moment. That's why you have to lean in and be yourself 100% and to show up and to trust that is enough. Yes, congrats to Geraldine. Currently, I'm a BSW and a few more months left. That's incredible. So cheers to that and to all of the dreams that you put in the chat as well. I want to acknowledge that before just moving on. I'm going to acknowledge all of those reasons to fly, because when we're able to harness that together, we can accomplish these beautiful things. And I can't tell you, the reason I'm also getting emotional is because I see a group and a room full of people from different backgrounds that have different purposes, and yet we're all here making the world a better place. And especially in a year that has been dark and a time that has been dark, seeing this hope is phenomenal. To see the butterfly flapping its wings, and not to create a storm, or maybe to create a storm, a beautiful storm. Storms aren't always bad. So yes, and I saw, Michael, that you do have a question, so I want to give time for that as well.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question. I was so moved. The first picture that you put up with all the young people standing there, birthday party, you and the athletics. I didn't comment or say anything because what I saw from that picture was a temporary smile. Because I can remember as young people, sometimes we kept busy to avoid things that were happening at home or in our minds and in our hearts. But when our friends went away, it was the darkest time. So my question to you, because you guys are growing up, I think this is what Generation Z they call it, or I don't know, whatever generation this is. But what is a clinical or educational approach to address or prevent that 16-year-old drop? Because like you, at 16 was the worst part of my life, from 16 to 20 years old. I mean, I barely made it out of high school, but my life, I mean, I shouldn't be on this call, but what are what steps today for young people? Because when we grew up, it was a little different. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. So, we weren't exposed to things, but you guys are exposed to so much. What is some advice or a little bullet point? I know it's probably a long answer, but what can you do to prevent the downfall of 16? What can be done before 16?
I think that's a great question, and I also want to thank you for sharing again. Like I will say and continue to say, my first thought as you were talking is of the I shouldn't be on this call. Is that neither should I, and that I think a lot of people would agree with that statement, and we wouldn't know that. But I am glad that you were here, and I think that you were here on for a reason. And so let me get into that. If that's okay. Um, so the fall of 16, as you said, ultimately the first thing that needs to change on like a systemic level is that we teach health education, at least when I was in middle school, which, oh gosh, that's probably 7, 8 years ago. But in health class, they would put the TV. Oh, sorry, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But you put on the TV, they put in this DVD that like has probably been around and used since the 1990, which is fine, but that's not what we should be educated with. The 90s is a great era, and I love all of y'all that were able to see some of it. I unfortunately was born in 2000, so I missed it by one. But anyways, in health class, I specifically remember these ancient DVDs, and our health teacher would just pop them in there, and we'd watch them, and that was like our sex ed, our phys ed, our everything. And so, what hopefully will happen is that we're being educated on mental health the same way that we're being educated to drink enough water. And right now, that's definitely not the case. I think that's a first step that will teach preteens the emotional awareness, because I'm telling you, people in college and adults as well, don't know their emotions, can't identify their emotions because they are programmed to say they're good. How are you? I literally have to deprogram my boyfriend when I'm saying, I'm like, how are you? You don't have to say good. I actually want to know how you are. And so that comes from people not even knowing how they feel because they've been programmed to say that they're good and that they're doing well. Um, and so I can't solve that right now, but education needs to happen first. And so until we can change that legislation, until we can create that change in schools, what I would say is that's on all of us. That's on our entire community to, before that teen reaches 16, they realize, yes, I see Melinda typing in the chat and a couple of you as well, developing emotional intelligence, right? So that starts, we can't change the education system right now in this moment, although I would love to. But in your community, in your church, your youth group, in your third grade classroom coach, in all of our ways that we can in our families, develop emotional intelligence. And sometimes I do this on an individual level with my friends, and maybe they think it's annoying, but I usually am like, how are you? And then I follow that up with, how are you really? Because I don't want the fake answer. I actually genuinely want to know. And so usually I'll do that. And I just am saying, listen, like, I actually do see you. And sometimes that fake smile you mentioned, some people have the eyes to notice that, and that is great, and that you have a gift if you can tell that's a temporary smile. And if you might have an inkling that someone in your church is struggling, or you might have an inkling that someone's been eating less or whatever it may be, And you go that step further with that person and you say, no, how are you really? That is actually an actively developing emotional intelligence. And no matter the age, that needs to happen. And that's not going to stop someone from falling off at age 16. But the earlier we have those conversations, the less of this stigma, weird idea that I don't even know how I'm feeling. Because sometimes, and when I was 16, I'm still in that 20, I'm 20 years old currently, so I'm still in that realm of like, things are hard. I mean, not to say that things aren't hard when you get out of that 4-year bracket, but we're still kind of developing this sense of self. So I'm going to read, Coach Leah, if that's okay, what you wrote. One of the things I love that our school does is the second step program, where emotions are given colors and zones, and we talk about it and how we can transition from one zone to another. It's a first step and it's a long way to go because they gave us the program, but not the time in the day to actually teach it, right? That's the reality. But it's a step. So that's very true. And I'm sure that you could go on for a while about how they didn't give you the time to teach it. But yes, deprogramming. So in schools where it starts about transitioning colors, and of course we're tasked with the impossible of, oh, you want to talk about emotions in school? You find time for it. Okay, that's fine. But I think that that's important, and okay, that's on us, and we're gonna make it happen. I want to try and recenter back onto Michael's question because there's a part of it that I wasn't able to answer yet. Michael, would you mind repeating what I haven't answered yet, if you wouldn't mind?
These reverends, we talk so much too, we forget. But so what is a strategic plan for this 21st century
Yes.
young adult
Mm.
to you're not going to I don't like to use that word, but it's just factual and statistical. You're not going to win them all or save them all, but how can you just lower the negative rate at 16 beforehand? I mean, how do you get them to recognize these emotions before they get 16?
Right, definitely. So thank you for reemphasizing and retracking my focus. So what I will say is that the same emotions that existed when you were 16 to 20 still exist today,
Yeah.
plus
Yeah.
the aspect that people can't get away from them, plus the fact that you go home and behind that closed door is also your iPhone, which has the 4 apps that you use all the time, your messages, who's read your messages, because you can see that, who's posting on their Instagram story, is someone together right now? Am I not invited? Am I seeing all these people in bikinis that don't look how I should look? And so we're having these messages constantly. And so what I would really say is the emotions existed and those haven't changed. It's more now they're compounded by the media. And the media existed before as well, obviously. But what it is now I feel like there's less of getting away from it. And some people, try and delete their social medias, but why is it that it's taking that in order to get away from all these emotions? So what I have tried to do, and what I will leave for you as food for thought, is creating the safe space where emotions can be discussed, where you talk about like, hey guys, like, happy Saturday. Like, how are you all doing? How was your week? But then going a step further and saying, this year has been tough. COVID's impacted a lot. Like, how has that impacted people? And if you'll be surprised if you ask the questions, you'll get the answers. I think people hide things because they feel like no one cares, because they feel like no one wants to know, or they don't want to share, they don't want to be weird. But if you ask the question, you're actively saying, I care and I want you to answer. And so what I would first suggest is starting those conversations early, and in whatever realm you have weight in. Any realm you have weight in, you can talk about mental health. Any realm you have weight in, you can ask someone how they're doing. And I know that's basic, but that's the showing up piece, right? And the follow-up is the follow-up that they need to be connected to with support. Now, whether that's talking to parent or guardian after school, after church, after whatever it is, and hopefully the parent or guardian is supportive. If not, there's always school counselors, school teachers. um, Call someone. You can go to a pediatrician's office and get a list of numbers, and even though that is not ideal, trust me, calling a list of people and being like, are you open for therapy, can I please get therapy? No, you can call back in 6 months. That's the reality. So that's why we can't just put it on the young person and say, go get help. No, it's, I'll come with you, we'll call all these people together, whatever, however you can help that person to ensure that they do get connected with a professional. Um, and also normalizing getting help from a professional is another first step, because people think, there's a lot of people that have ideas that that is scary, that's a bad thing, that means you're crazy. No, call a local family center. Thank you for mentioning that as well. Because there's this stigma still that you need to be a certain way to get help. Um, and I will say that also that exists everywhere, but less so now. I've known more people that are getting therapy, I think, which is honestly probably an improvement over time. But all of these pieces, I mean, I know this is a long-winded answer, but that's because all of these pieces go in together. And because I know what you mentioned earlier, you by yourself might not be able to save everybody, and that's not your job, but to start the conversation and then to connect is the biggest piece. And before 16, yes, hopefully, but also once they hit that 16, because that is the lonely, that's can be lonely. Once you're suffering under this, where it seems like you're holding the weight of the world, or once you're already suffering mental illness, you need support then too. And unfortunately, maybe you can't be prevented from getting the mental illness, but you can have that support and that safe space. And I'm thinking also of my students in Washington, D.C., where I served last year as a third grade student. And I'm thinking that I didn't have a social work degree. I wasn't able to go home with these kids, but I was able to walk down the hallway with them. I was able to have a lunch with them. I was able to understand a little bit about what their life was like outside the walls of the school. So find out what what their life is like outside of the institution that you're in, because that will reveal a lot to you about what they're carrying with you. And so you want to listen to what they're carrying, but then also help them carry it, because no child should have to do that alone. And I think that if they learn that early on, the less likely it is that any drop will happen at 16. And I wish I had an easier answer, but the truth is we need systemic change and we need long-term change, and that's going to happen with all of us playing our individual roles, and sustaining those over time. Long answer, but I'm going to stop talking and let anybody else.
That was awesome,
Bella.
Isabel. I appreciate it. And just lastly, I know we got to go. I think she said we got 10 minutes, but I would like to say this last thing, and I thank all the professionals. There's other psychologists and those on the line, the family center, and your soccer coach. But I can say for 100%, and as you were talking, Isabel, that mental health from society standpoint, they think it of us somebody that's may look like, they're special or they're Down syndrome or something. No, mental health is working everyday people, 9 to 5 people. It's police officers, it's doctors, it's real deep. And I think that if we can just realize that and people can feel comfortable coming to us, I think that's the challenge. And you said that early in your deliberation that we got to get people comfortable to say it, and society's got to stop looking down on it. We can talk about everything else, but we can't talk about our emotions. So awesome job. I'm going to be calling you.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
All right.
So I love that, and I appreciated that question more than I think you know. And that's what we have to bring home. That's what we have to bring home after 12:30, is learning to do that in the spaces that we all have, and pushing for more spaces to be like that as well. Because the spaces that we all have, while they're huge and while they make a difference to all the lives that you're touching, um, we also live in a world that needs more light. And we live in a world where boundaries sometimes need to be pushed in our government. And where I hope that we can join on that journey together. Don't know how many times I'm going to probably say thank you to all of you, but I want to make sure that that's emphasized because my voice isn't anything without yours. And I think your voice has power. And I hope that you go through this weekend and go through this week with a new sense of that, with a new sense of your importance, and also just a sense of what conversations you want to start when you enter the rest of your weekend and the rest of this week, because it's that time. This isn't something that can be pushed aside any longer. This is a crisis that needs our support. So thank you for giving that support, and let's continue to bring it for the rest of our lives. I look forward to seeing your faces, hopefully in names in the future. Best of luck to all your endeavors, and hold tight your reasons to fly, because when the world gets dark, those are what has kept me rooted. So thank you all. I hope you're able to use those.